Good morning, artists. This video is geared towards artists who are learning from home. Today we're going to learn how to grid an image of a creature that we are going to be painting for our next artwork. The previous art class, we gridded out a plain white piece of paper that was 9 inches by 12 inches. And this is the surface we're eventually going to be drawing and painting on. However, today I want to teach you how to grid out your image that you printed out, your reference image. And to do that, you're going to need your reference image that you printed out, a ruler, and something to draw lines with, either a pencil, a thin marker, a pen. You get to decide based on how dark your lines are and how dark your image is. Now I'm going to challenge you. You printed out a full-size image, and I'm going to help you stretch and explore. I'm going to make you a little bit uncomfortable, but I want you to think about cropping and composition, and you are going to make your image much smaller. You're going to make it 6 inches by 4.5 inches. That card shows you how big that is. You could do that in a lot of ways. You could measure and cut. I'm actually just going to start folding. So I'm going to look at my image. I'm going to decide, where do I want to fold? I think I'll fold right here. I'm going to fold one side. And then from there, I'm going to measure. Where's 4.5 inches up? Okay, good. It's right at the top line here. You can fold, you can measure. If you're measuring with your ruler, I'm doing 4.5 inches up. You could do 4.5 inches across. It could be landscape or portrait orientation. Just make sure you mark on both sides and then draw your line. And for 6 inches wide, I think I'm going to cut it here. So I'll draw my line to cut. And 6 inches wide, I'm going to mark at the top here and the bottom. This is actually really important that you get your image exactly 6 by 4.5 inches. So that's really important for later. So go ahead and pause the video now if you need to, in order to fold, cut, draw lines, whatever you have to do. Double check with your ruler, really measure it. Make sure it's 6 inches wide by 4.5 inches tall, or 4.5 inches wide by 6 inches tall. So double check. I'm double checking my measurements. Okay, good. You can cut it, whatever you have to do. So go ahead and take a break if you need to. Pause the video. Go get some supplies and come back. And you're literally cropping down your image to make it much smaller. I know this is uncomfortable. For some of you, this might mean half of a face. For some of you, it means you can't see the body or the background. But this portrait is going to really push your limits of what you can include and what you can exclude from a work of art to create an interesting composition. So really try to get it to 6 inches by 4.5 inches. That's the size you want. So go ahead and do that. When you're done cutting your image, folding your image, measuring your image, we're now going to grid this out. Last time we gridded, we used the 1-inch marks. This time, we're also going to be using those in between half inches as well. So in between each of the numbers, there should be a ½ inch. Be careful not to use the centimeter side. Make sure you're using the inch side. In this case, if you're following along with me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up my ruler. Make sure you're lining up the 0 with the edge of the artwork. And make a mark along the top, not only at every inch, but that in between ½ inch point. And really pay close attention. Make sure you don't mess that up. And before you do the next steps, just kind of look at it. Make sure it looks even. Same thing on the bottom. Line up the ruler with the edge of the paper at the 0 mark. And then make a mark ½ inch, inch, And if it's dark, you might have to switch back and forth between a pencil and a marker, whatever you want. Just make sure your lines are pretty thin. And I'm making my marks. Now I'm going to use my ruler to connect the top and the bottom. And I'm going to begin drawing a grid. Make sure it's perfect. And you have some nice lines there. And begin to draw your grid. Line up your ruler with the top and the bottom. And then go ahead and draw your line. You're going to do this all the way across. Take your time. Feel free to pause the video. Come back to the video as often as you need to. Take your time. The next thing I have to do is the other side. So now I'm going to line up my 0 point in my ruler with the edge of the artwork. Same thing, every ½ inch, make a mark. 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, 3.5, 4. Same thing on this side. ½ inch, 1, 1.5, 2. I'm doing this kind of quick because I have a lot of practice, so don't worry if it's taking you a lot longer. And then line up your ruler left side and right side. Make sure it's nice and even. And draw your line across. We're creating a grid right on top of your resource image. Some artists like to do this on top of clear paper so they don't have to draw directly on their resource image. So if you happen to have access to something that's clear that you can draw a grid on, like a transparency, I don't know, some kind of plastic packaging, go ahead and use it. Maybe a plexiglass. But for most of us, we don't have those resources at home. So I just like to use a printout or a calendar page, and I go ahead and I draw right on top of it. I will show you one that I did on a transparency. So here I have a transparency, and then I could put that on top of any image that I have to make it into a grid. So if you do have that as an option, that's another good thing to do. That's the end of gridding out our resource, but I want to just mention one last thing. Your resource, even though it's much smaller, has the same exact number of squares as your larger image. So we're going to use this to transfer a drawing from one side to the next. So there should be 11 or 12. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, I have 12 boxes across the top. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Good, 12 and 12. So we have 2 images that are different sizes, but we can very easily grid from one to the next. As you get more advanced, you could do your own version of this with different size papers, as long as your resource has the same number of squares as the paper you are going to be gridding on. Good job. Please let me know if you have any questions.